Almost every year, surprising discoveries are made in the ocean. As recently as 1976, the U.S. Navy accidentally dredged up a totally unknown and quite large shark, the ferocious-looking megamouth, weighing almost a ton. And for centuries, there have been reports of the so-called Great Sea Serpent. Scores of captains have recorded such sightings in their ship's logs. And no skipper makes an entry in his log without a very good reason.
This happened to a Norwegian ship, and this was the monster reported by HMS Daedalus. The crew of the city of Baltimore saw the head of a serpent in the Gulf of Aden, and the bowsprit of the British banner was chewed up by a serpent in 1860. The only systematic attempt to analyze reports of the sea serpent has been launched by two Canadian scientists, John Seibert and Paul LeBlanc. They've concentrated on the coastal waters off Vancouver. Dozens of sightings were reported.
There were at least 25 of them who would describe species not really known to marine biology.
Seashelt, a 30-minute flight north of Vancouver, is the location of yet another report needing investigation. A local boy, John Andrews, was fishing off a pier when his sighting occurred.
Could you tell us exactly what it looked like?
I guess it looked pretty much like a long snake-like thing with fins on it. And at first sight of it, I saw a head about 1.5 feet long, about 8-9 inches wide. And it had large cat-like eyes, and they reflected light like a cat's, and they could move in opposite directions. One was looking at me and one at the bottom. And then I noticed that it was about thickness of my thigh, almost a foot around.
The body of the animal.
Yeah, the body itself. And it was, after it had swum underneath me, I noticed that it was probably about 40 or 50 feet long.
Did it have fins?
Yeah, it had 2 in the front, 2 in the back, and it swam undulated, like up and down instead of side to side. And it swam right under me.
It's difficult to say what kind of creature John saw. It certainly doesn't match well with any kind of known mammal or any kind of known fish for that matter. The long snake-like body suggests that it's not a mammal, but its up and down undulation motion is typically mammalian.
We found that there were about 3 main categories of strange animals which had been reported. One of them was serpentine, of the kind that John Andrews described to us. There was another one with a long neck and rather coarse hair of like coconut fibers, as it was described by one witness. And a third category also had a long neck, but was sometimes mentioned to have a mane, and sometimes also mentioned to have horns, with a head looking like that of a sheep or like that of a giraffe.
None of the witnesses in the survey were professional artists. But it's clear enough from the drawings in their questionnaires what they thought they saw. This is John Andrews' sketch of his sighting. Margaret Stout saw this in 1961, and David Miller saw this creature off Discovery Island. But it may be that the body of such a sea monster has fallen into the hands of man. In September 1977, this Japanese fishing boat was off the east coast of New Zealand when it trawled up in its nets a mystifying carcass. The Japanese TV networks were excited enough to helicopter teams out over the South Pacific and winch their reporters down onto the ship at sea. On the deck of the Zuyo Maru, the skipper talked to journalists.
On April the 25th at about 10:30, we noticed something big caught in the nets. It was a red, fleshy object which smelled very strongly. We didn't know what it was, so I went for my camera and flash gun.
Sadly, the body itself was afterwards thrown back. But early in 1980, one of the world's leading fisheries experts, Professor Fujio Yasuda, arrived for a conference in London with such evidence as remains.
This is all the evidence about the unknown creature dredged from the sea by the Yurumaru off New Zealand on the 25th of April 1977. These photographs were taken by Mr. Yano of Taiyo Fisheries. The real half of the body was rotten and dropped off. As you can see in this photograph, the surface of the body is covered with a fat-like substance. This is the drawing made by Mr. Yano after measuring the creature. I can't think of any known fish which has this shape. I can't tell what this creature is, but I assure you that it is completely unknown to us.
But sea monsters don't only materialize in the remote oceans. In 1976, just 30 miles off the Lizard in Cornwall, two fishermen, George Vinicum and John Cox, also met a monster.
Well, it went steaming 30 miles off, 25 to 30 miles off. Saw what I thought was an upturned boat on the horizon.
So we went over to investigate. When we got closer, we could see it wasn't an upturned boat. It was something that, well, neither of us have seen before. So it was dark in color, had sort of humps on the back. I should say it was, well, between 15 and 18 feet in length, and rising above the sea about 3 feet. It was a flat, calm day. There was no disturbance on the sea at all.
When we got up closer, well, a little closer, I came astern, to our amazement, up out the water about 3 feet from this body, head appeared out the water. And it was a, well, thing I've never seen before after about 40 years at sea. And it gradually sank in the water and disappeared. But after talking about it, the only thing we could explain it was very much like a prehistoric animal.
The whole thing, I suppose, would have weighed, what, several tons. And equal in size, I should think, the boat we were in. You know, the boat was 32 feet long.
Although whales and many sea creatures occasionally come ashore, there seem to be few records of a stranded sea monster. One of the most celebrated, however, occurred in 1808 beneath the cliffs of the island of Stronsa in Orkney. Precise drawings were made of the Stronsa beast at the time, and its dimensions were carefully measured. More than 50 witnesses swore to what they had seen. Today, among the other exotic exhibits at the Royal Scottish Museum in Edinburgh, is a piece of the backbone of the Stronsa beast. It's now in the care of Dr. Jeff Swinney.
This was an animal which was described as being some 55 feet long. It was described as having a mane of hair running down the full length of the back, a tiny little head, a long neck, and many of the eyewitnesses, all the eyewitnesses who gave evidence on what they saw of this monster, quite reasonably interpreted this as being a totally new beast, a creature that they were completely unfamiliar with. Well, in the December of 1977, I was fortunate enough in being able to examine a beast which was stranded on the shore of the Tay near Carnoustie. These are the vertebrae of that animal, a basking shark. And I think the inevitable conclusion is that the animal which was stranded in Stronsa, in the Orkneys, was a basking shark. What tends to happen when a basking shark dies and the carcass rots is that the cartilages which are supporting the snout here tend to drop away. So these go, the snout goes. The large area here which contains the gill tissues falls away. So all that lot goes. And what we're left with is a small skull in this region and a long vertebra long vertebral column here, which tends to give the appearance of a very small-headed creature with a long neck. The fins tend to fray out. And in the case of a male, another set of what might appear to be limbs would be in this region here, and the lower lobe of the tail tends to fall away. So what we're left with is this small-headed, long-necked creature with this long, tapering body.
But a rotting basking shark certainly doesn't explain the beast with great teeth, and basking sharks are tiny, which came ashore, also in Scotland, at Gourock on the River Clyde in 1942. Being wartime, the Royal Navy wouldn't permit photographs. And finally, the beast was taken to the grounds of the municipal incinerator. On the orders of the borough surveyor, Charles Rankin, it was chopped up and buried under what is now the football pitch of St. Ninian's Roman Catholic Primary School, Gourock. Mr. Rankin.
I can't see that this carcass was a rotting basking shark. In the first place, this animal showed no signs of rotting. It was absolutely complete, unmarred. The monster measured approximately 28 feet from the tip of the nose to the end of the tail. The body, as it lay on the ground, was approximately 5 to 6 feet deep. The body could be described as having three parts: the body, the neck, and the tail, and the neck and tail tapered very gradually away from the body. The animal had teeth about perhaps that size, and on both jaws. In the stomach of the creature was a small portion of what I took to be a seaman's jersey. It was an open knitted portion of some knitted material. And the other thing, strangely enough, was the corner of what can be described as an old-fashioned tablecloth. Just the corner, and it was complete with tassels.
The evidence for still unknown sea monsters is almost overwhelming. As for the great sea serpent, it too probably exists, except that it may not be a serpent, and there may be several different types of animal involved. The solution to this old mystery may come quite soon. At this moment, the two greatest powers on Earth are trying to develop sonar systems which will make the seas transparent so they can track each other's nuclear submarines. Those systems will locate the sea serpent if it exists. Indeed, at this moment, the evidence for its existence may be somewhere in the Pentagon or the Kremlin.
Invention follows the break, with Michael Rodd investigating a new development capable of reducing the dangers of sun tanning.